Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. I'm glad that we made it to Thursday because it has been a long week. But I think part of that is because everybody is itching to get out onto the water. So Wisconsin, we just had our fishing opener, I guess. And so Minnesota, I think they are coming up this weekend. And you know what? I think everybody all around is going to be having nice weather. So I know that only covers 2 states, not everybody, but I think that's where maybe the majority of our viewers come from. I guess I'm just guessing that. But, we're interested in where you're at, how fishing is going by you, because this is that time of the season where there are trends that are really moving across, I was going to say the states. Wherever you are at. And so I guess we were out this past weekend, and the funny thing is we're mostly looking for panfish, and so we always joke like we could have been doing that the weekend before too. But it's a great weekend to be out, and we ended up finding a whole bunch of bonus walleyes.
Yeah, we went out and all the fish were kind of all in the same spot, which is kind of unusual. So we did find a few crappies, but we got a few bonus walleyes, and you outfished me for sure.
I just didn't notice, I guess. You keep saying that, and I don't know, I guess I didn't realize that, right? But what we were doing different though this time is using very different baits. And so you do tend to use a larger bait than I do, and that just, I guess, the nature of how we fish. And what's funny is you were using a really bright profile, so I don't want to give away all your secrets, and I'll let you talk about it. But what I was using was a really little tiny inch. Is it an inch or an inch and a half? Gosh, it is the smallest.
It was an inch and a half.
Tail. Yeah, it's an IJO plastic. So Kevin Clancy, he made it for me. Like, honestly, it was one that I got a really long time ago. And I will be honest with you, I think it started as like a peachy color, and because it's been in my box so long, it's faded a little bit. But it was the perfect tone, you guys. It was not quite white. It was this very light color, and it was this very small twist tail. And the key, I think, as much as the plastic, was the jig head, because you needed a heavy enough jig to get to the bottom, but not too heavy of a jig that you would fly past any fish that were in the water column if they were there, because fish in both places were eating. But again, if your jig is flying past those suspended fish, you were missing them. And so maybe you were getting the ones on the bottom, but that was working better towards evening when we were finding the walleye.
Yeah, and I think you had a really good size. Like you said, I was using bright colors. I think anything in that the white spectrum, right? We talk about a lot about black and white, and then variations thereof. And I was running more towards like the lime truce, the chartreuse, kind of that wavelength of yellows. And I got a few fish, some of the, we weren't catching giant crappies, but we were catching crappies in that 8 to 10 inch range. And I caught a couple that were, 7 inches that ate a 3-inch fluke, because I was running flukes on 3-inch flukes on my core tackle stroller, like the hover rigs. Love those things. So I'm really happy to be back doing those. But I was running that. I ran a couple of bigger twisters. I was running a little bit heavier than you, so you were using 32nd and I was using 16th, and I don't know if that so much was the difference. I think you just had the right profile at the right time, and I don't know if I could have mimicked what you were doing. You were doing a really good job at being erratic and keeping your bait in the strike zone, and I don't know, I was just messing around. So
thanks. I wasn't trying that hard.
I know. That's why you can't replicate.
That sounds so scientific. It was not like
no, but so this week, I believe in the next after this week and into next week, I really do think that our panfish spawn is going to be short and sweet this year. I think that we're gonna get, or at least the crappie and bass spawn is gonna come and go. Within a few days, I think that water is gonna pump right up there with all this warm weather. Then that's one of my favorite times of year, that post spawn. the weeds start setting up. You have weed lines.
Well, that's getting ahead of
It's
ourselves,
not.
though.
It's not getting ahead of, because the water. I was just out at work, and some of the water just south of us is at 63 degrees. And so after a week of 80-degree temps coming up here in Wisconsin, there's 90-degree temps out in Minnesota
I'm
for
just
opener.
saying, I'm having to cut you off because we're not there yet, and we can talk about this all night. But we have a guest that we would rather talk about this with, right? Because I know that. Well, our guest is now fishing, and so we're gonna ask him in a minute. But to anybody at home, let us know where you're at. Let us know what your water temps are. Go on a rant like Josh was, because we're interested in
I'm
all
a
that.
ranter.
It's an exciting
I'm a
time of
ranter.
season. It's an
What do you
exciting
want
time of
from
the year. Yeah. So let's bring Matt in, because that is the reason that we're here.
Hey, Matt.
So Matt, thanks so much for being here.
Hi guys. Listen
and-
to your banter and your rant here has been more entertaining probably than I'm going to be.
Don't worry, we're not kicking them off.
Not yet.
So we feel like we bump into you all the time, and that is so fun. But for people who maybe this is their first time meeting you, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, you can see my name on the screen. My name's Matt. I've known you guys for several years. Normally, we see each other at shows. For some reason, we live an hour apart and never get a chance to fish together, which I haven't figured that out. We just talked about that a few minutes ago. Not much tell. I'm from Marshfield originally. I moved to Wausau about 10 years ago. I've been fishing forever. I mean, it's like everybody else fishing when you're a little kid and just kind of kept at it. The bulk of my fishing is up through the ice. I get soft water. It's a half dozen times I'll go out, and that'll be about it for the year. But then once the water gets hard, then you'll see me out a whole lot more. And I seem to be better at that, and I enjoy it. And would enjoy it more. Just more access to different places.
Well, and so while you're mentioning ice season, I feel like I should ask, how did ice season go for you?
Good. I don't usually keep a logbook. I don't know where I put it. Of how many times I went out, where I was at. You had my buddy Zach on here a couple weeks ago. Him and I fished together a lot in the winter. We were all over. We tried different lakes up north. We hit our regular spots. Did pretty well. The panfish bite was pretty decent. My walleye bite was pretty slow. There's a lake right in town that's actually a really good pike lake and a really good walleye lake that people don't realize. So we did pretty well on northern up over on Lake Wausau. Out on the old plain flowage isn't too far away, so we fished that quite a bit. Did pretty decent on crappies and a few walleyes out there. So all in all, it was a pretty good season. Came back alive, didn't break anything, so it was a successful year.
And I love ice season as well, but one of the things that I love about getting back to open water is having that ability to move back around, troll around. Ice, you have to be drilling holes and kind of constantly keeping up that way. And I was finding this year that some of our fish were setting up in different patterns than I'd actually expected. And so I was really excited to get back to open water season, and I guess some of these lakes we haven't visited yet. But I have to ask, have you been to open water again this year?
Just once so far. I got down below the Dubay Dam. I don't work Friday. I work Monday through Thursday. I don't work Fridays. So I took a Friday and ran down below the Dubay Dam. Did okay on walleyes. A lot of shorts. One decent female. Everything full of eggs yet, so everything went back swimming. But there was quite a few people down there, quite a few fish caught. But the spawn is pretty much done. The run is pretty much done, other than a few late bloomers here. So that's been my one time out so far this year. Tomorrow I'm gonna run up northwestern part of Wisconsin, fish with a buddy of ours, fish at Ryan. Then it'll start slowing down. Like I don't summer fish a whole lot. Like there's a couple tournaments we do in the summer. We do a memorial tournament for our friend Timmy, and then there's one other one we do, and I fish with a couple other friends once or twice, and that's about it. Otherwise, I spend the summer working and doing family stuff and doing the adult thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. But you were talking about getting out below the dam. And that's something that I think a lot of people get a little bit intimidated to do. When you have not gotten out and done that yourself yet, people always hear online about the amount of flow and all that, and how you keep up with it. So tell us a little bit about what was working for you.
I fish a real simple rig. There's either a 3-way rig or a Wolf River rig is the other name for it. So basically, it's just a dropped egg sinker. It's a 3-way swivel, the dropped egg sinker, and a treble hook, and a minnow. And so basically, the egg sinker sits down. It's always like a drop shot rig, but just tied different. So the egg sinker sits on the bottom, keeps your bait up off the bottom and in the water column a little bit. And there's also another rig that is a swivel with a main line tied off the main line, with a dropper line below it, and just an egg sinker above it that slides down as far as the swivel. So the egg sinker sits on the bottom, and the minnow sits up just off the bottom, 8-10 inches, and it's been really effective. I mean, I've used it down in Nakusa quite a bit. It doesn't snag real easily because it's like below the Dubay Dam, it's a lot of gravel, a lot of rocks. It doesn't snag real easy because that bell sinker will slip through the rocks, and it just basically you fire it out as far as you can. You let it settle down, put the rod and rod holder, and wait for the tip to start twitch. It's a pretty static way to fish. There's guys that, you see every style out. There's guys that jig, they'll throw 1/2-ounce jigs to keep them pinned to the bottom. And there was a guy trying to slip bobber fish, which didn't look like it was working real well because the water was cruising a little too fast for that. But there's a lot of fish. There's a lot of flow, and one of the keys to fishing that is to find slack water. If there's a log, a stick, anything where if you can see the water pooling up behind it, where the water's slacking up, a lot of times the females will swim up behind that and rest. They're not fighting that current, so they'll park in that slack water, and they'll just sit there and rest before they try to swim up further and lay eggs. And if you can get into that slack water, a lot of times they'll pick fish out of it.
I feel like that's a little bit brave of you, because sometimes you hear slack water and sometimes it's like a tree or something there that's creating that, and so I think that's really a great point to know your waterway. And like you're saying, with gravel and sand, or rocks and pebbles, that's something that you can work around. But what a great way to find those fish.
Yeah, it works pretty good. It's especially, like I said, I'm maritime deficient, which means I don't have a boat. So I do everything. I do everything offshore. So, the below the dams is really a good way. It's a really good resource for us because you can, there's a lot of room. There's a lot of opportunity, but it's a short window. It's that spawn window, that walleye run window. And then, you'll get different places like Nakusa, Fremont, you'll get the white bass. There's a very narrow window of crappies that'll get in some of those pools. But then they start moving down into regular river patterns, they get to deeper water, and you'll pick up catfish now and again. I caught a sturgeon 4 or 5 years ago. I caught a sturgeon over by Mosinee. So it's kind of fun. You have smallmouth. I mean, you never know what you're gonna hang. That's it's one of the things about fishing that's fun is whenever you set the hook, you're not really 100% sure what's on the other end of the string. Could be a sturgeon, could be a stick. I mean, you don't know, but you're gonna haul something in the shore and at least looking, something's gonna be there.
Well, in the springtime is a great time to be a shore fisherman, I feel like, because a lot of times I've seen shore fishermen be a lot more successful being able to cast out and then be bringing their bait in, whether it's a slip bobber or a jig or something. And because that's what's happening this time of year, bait fish and stuff are coming in from deeper water up into shallows, and predators will set up in whatever edge they can find. The weeds aren't up this time of year, but they'll set up there and wait for that stuff to come in. So I feel like this is a great time to utilize those great shore spots, like, below the dam. If that starts to dry up, you can just hop above the dam and start going around some of the edges in like, you said, Plain, Dubay's up there. There's a whole bunch of places like that, and I bet the Wisconsin River even has some spots, right, that you could probably shore fish that have some backwater.
the disclaimer to that is you got to make sure you know where you're at, because you don't want to
Yeah.
get trespassing wandering around up and down the riverbank. But the Wisconsin River, like Nakusa Rapids, Byron Flowage, all those areas. Dubé is Lake Dubé above the dam, and then the Old Plain Flowage. North shoreline's basically facing south, where the water warms up quicker, get your bait fish. They'll pull up. I always kind of laugh about this. You ever notice that people that have boats, they're out in the middle of the lake and they cast towards shore, and the people that are on shore cast out in the middle of the lake?
Right.
But there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, it's this time of year especially. You talked about panfish before. I was mentioning cranberry marshes before we came on air. I fished a lot of cranberry bogs down around the southern part of the state, south central part of the state. And there's a lot of those that are open to fish. It's private property, but they, as long as you respect the property, they let you fish on it. There's really good fish in some of those. There's flowages. There's flowages basically, but there's small marshy flowages with tributaries and little ponds, stacked full of bluegills, stacked full of crappies. It's a lot of them are dug retention ponds for cranberry marshes. So they're a big bowl and they're a sand bottom. So it's prime breeding territory for crappies. You can, if you do it right, if you get permission or you find the public spots or the spots that they don't mind you fish, I shouldn't say public, it's private property. And use a good set of polarized glasses, you can actually stand on shore and look and watch them build beds. And you can, we do 99% of what we do is catch and release, because it's too easy. Fish in a barrel, it's really too easy. So we don't keep hardly any fish, just because you could clean a lake out. It's that simple.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so in these cases, you're just going and knocking on doors and like finding people that are like going to let you in? You don't have to give away all of your secrets, because we don't want to.
Electronic scouting, onyx. Some of these are spots that somebody that's fished down there, so you drive down and you talk to the people that are standing there fishing, and they don't care if you fish here. There's spots down there that we fished for years, that, and I can't remember how many years ago this was. I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago. We had fished a spot for years, and went down 2 years ago. Went down 2 years ago. There's brand new no trespassing signs up. So somebody else must have bought the property. You respect the signs. Really disappointing, because it's a really good spot, but and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I couldn't get permission to go, and I just you don't want to take it for granted that, well, just because they put new signs up, doesn't mean anything, because that's the warden standard talking about why you're trespassing. So it's easier to get permission to fish than it is to hunt.
Yeah.
Because people don't mind as long as you're not leaving garbage behind. Pack it in, pack it out, as long as you're respectful. But a lot of people don't care if you cross their property to fish. And the bulk of them aren't, as long as you get permission and they know you're in there, they're not going to complain. It's when you start leaving garbage behind and, they have issues, then that's when you start losing permission. But, I think they understand that fishing can be a catch and release. It's not necessarily like deer or turkey or whatever, if you harvest, you harvest. I mean, it's going home with you, where fish can send back to swim for a while and they can come out and catch them or bring their kids out or whatever. It's less of a population depletion.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, we've done that too. We've gotten plat books and knocked on doors, and done public waterway stuff, taken small John boats and put in off the roadway culverts, and did the feet wet rule. And
yeah, that's always fun.
I think that there's a lot of people that can relate to this, though, because there's a lot of people that don't have boats, and like, especially what Josh was saying, springtime, a lot of fish are pushing shallow. And so when you are in a boat and you're just trying to get to the shallow, I mean, a lot of people, they do try to instead do shore fishing. And so I think that this is so relevant to so many people, and maybe not quite the cranberry marshes, right? But depending on where you are, you kind of are bringing similar setups with you. Is that right? So are you coming with like bobbers? Are you jigging? How are you finding these fish?
Well, so the bulk of my fishing is panfish, so we'll keep it simple with that. I have um, the bulk of what I used have always been short length, like not looking at the camera. I'm sitting there staring at the rods right now. That's why I'm looking out to space. I've got a 5-foot St. Croix with a PC Fun Carbon X2 1000 size reel and 4-pound fins braid. So the short rod helps to pack it. I mean, not really packing it out, but carrying it out, just because you're not hanging up in trees and sticking in the ground and everything else. I have a backpack for a tackle bag, and I fish mostly either Kevin Clancy's IGO plastics or a container of worms, some gulp alive stuff. But whatever I can pack in a backpack. I don't carry a metal bucket with me or any of that. I this year now, over the winter, I signed a deal with PC Fun for a promotional field staff spot. So my new rig is the brand new Carbon XT in 1000 series, and the new Carbon R1 rod, 6'6" ultralight fast. And I made a video about this and I haven't got it up online yet, but I was trying to make the lightest rig I possibly could. So the reel by itself weighs about 5.3 ounces. The rod is just over 3. So the reel spooled with fins braid, 4-pound crappie line, a slip bobber, a jig, a bead, slip bobber knot, complete, done, is 9 ounces.
Nice.
That's pretty crazy.
Ridiculously light. This R1's monocoque design carbon fiber handle, so there's no weight to it whatsoever. Integrated reel seat. I mean, it's a good compact package. It's sleek. It's easy to carry. It's balanced. It's lighter than this St. Croix that's a foot shorter. Actually, it's fun. And the Carbon X2 is actually pretty light reel, but this XT and this R1 setup is going to be killer. But it's all about travel light because you're carrying everything in. There's a couple spots that I fish. You can drive right up to it. You park, you get out of your truck, you walk 20 feet, and you're throwing hooks out. There's a spot where I walk about a mile. So I want to not carry anything as far as I possibly can. I mean, usually if I can jam it in my pockets and then carry one rod, because I just don't want to carry anything else.
And then you carry one rod, you said? Oh my gosh. Okay. And so then when you're like hiking around and stuff, are you using like a rod sock? Are you like covering up your reels? Because anytime I try to hike anywhere with a rod, I just feel like I tangle up in like branches and trees and plants everywhere. And I'm like, am I just the crazy one? Or
oh no, I raw
make
dog
it sound so easy.
Now I'm a glutton for punishment. I raw dog it. Like I said, I'm usually pulling knots out of shit. And life's an adventure. Might as well make it as painful as possible.
Well, I guess the other thing that I worry about in my case when I'm getting stuck on branches and stuff is, the integrity of like your fishing line and everything that when you get there, because I don't know, you're right. It's not like the snagging that really drives me nuts, but you're also mentioning that you are using fins line, fins braid. And so that's like a really strong, that's like a really durable line that you don't actually have to worry that much about. So that actually is a lot of peace of mind as you're hiking through.
Yeah, the fins has been pretty good. That we started that program with the ice tamer braid a couple of years ago at the Oshkosh Ice Show, and Fins approached a few of us, and they were just developing this ice line, and they wanted us to try it out, and it's gone gangbusters. So I started using it everything. So like the crappie tamer, I use a 4-pound. I went to a high vis yellow because first of all I'm getting old, so my eyesight's not very good, and the yellow actually works really well with crappies and their lift bites. Because if you do a lot of crappie fish, they do what they call an up bite or a lift bite. So they come from underneath, they grab the bait, and the line will actually slack. So you're starting out static with your line being taut with enough weight just enough weight that it keeps the line taut, but not too heavy that it spooks the fish off. And you can actually watch that line fold up when a crappie comes up and soft gulps it. And these super fast tips on rods too. You can actually watch a rod tip raise. That's why a lot of your ice rods for crappie are noodle rods. You put them out in the wind and the tip of the rod sits and bounces around. But crappie comes up and grabs it. You can actually, I've seen them actually invert the curve where they lift it. So the fins being preloaded the way it is super sensitive and it's tough. So your hook sets are simply a lift. You don't have to, do the old sailfish hook set. You can just pick up on it and set the hook.
That's
And
still
it's like you said, when you're carrying through the woods, you nick, if you bump it against branches and, whatever the case may be, you're fishing rocks, you don't get a lot of the abrasion you do with mono and with fluorocarbon.
Well, I'm really inspired by just that you're walking in all these places, because I have to say there's a lot of places around us. I mean, we have a boat, we have access, but I mean, there's a lot of lakes that don't have. Right. Even if we have a boat, boats don't go in. There is no access. There is no way in. And so it's hiking only. And I think I see a few comments in the comment section about like get a kayak, and it's like, yeah, of course I want one. But I'm just really inspired by the fact that you're walking in and exploring these lakes that way, because there is so much water out there that is really truly untouched by people. And I think the springtime is one of the best times to be looking at this.
Well, and you think about it, if you want to pop out after work, because I work 5 to 3, I get done at 3 o'clock. If I want to pop out after work, I don't want to drag a boat to work or come home and hook on a boat, go out to the lake, get unhooked, get the boat off, go through all of that work. You're adding how much time to throwing a couple rods in a tackle bag in the truck and, drive out of town 15 minutes and you got a spot is safe and legal to walk on, take your stuff out of the truck, walk up to the lake, start chucking. In 10 minutes, you're getting lines wet.
Okay, but that's my other problem is then like, how do I scale down the tackle? Because anytime I leave one thing behind, it's always the one thing I need.
Well, it depends what you want to target. You know how it is. I mean, if you want to fish for bass, you take a handful of bass plugs or a handful of, plastics. And McBride just made a comment that's think about the money you save. True, fuel prices. I mean, gas is friggin' expensive.
No, I'm not against it. I'm just saying, how much of my tackle can I carry?
Yeah, but back to your point, if you're going out bass fishing, you do, some jigs, some plastics. If you got stuff wacky rigged or whatever. I'm not a bass guy, so I don't know what the hell I'm talking about with bass, but you panfish, you take one of these ultralight, take a small Plano box with a couple of slip bobbers and a couple of small jigs and a couple of clip-on bobbers. KMDA Inc. Is another company that I pro staff for. It's actually under the Ice Runner brand, but KMDA is the parent company. They have what they call a wing it bobber system. So it's a clip-on bobber system, quick change clip-on bobber system. They have it also now with jigs. I haven't looked into that yet, but I just saw it on one of their website things today. So you can carry a multitude of different colors and baits and bobbers with only having to tie one thing on a line. So you stuff a couple of floats and a couple of bobbers in your pocket, a couple of jigs in a small box or in a bag. You get a vest, get a fishing vest, and one rod. I mean, you don't have to carry that much stuff with you. You're only gonna be out for a couple hours.
Right.
I was gonna say you're only out for a couple hours. How much stuff can you lose? But trust me, you can lose a lot. I'm the only guy I know about that snake ice fishing this year.
I'm imagining this vest with like 100 pockets everywhere, like all stuffed. I'm imagining Lakewood case, backpack, all full with a bag,
Well,
holding
okay.
rods.
If you're going fishing
so all kidding aside, I really think what we need to get you, if you're thinking of doing shore fishing,
is fanny pack.
No, a mini sidekick. It's like a perfect. So we have a sidekick that we use for our walleye box, right? And so it's a really nice like carry all. You can put cranks in there. You can put a couple of 3700s. The mini sidekick basically makes everything in half. So you put 3600 boxes in there. You can fit 2. Put a few cranks, a little bit of line, like you said, some bobbers, I think you'd be fine with that.
Well,
You could stand on it. You could be 4 inches taller.
well, she's making it sound like she has to have a camel go along so you can put a pack mule behind it and
Yeah.
get all the stuff into the lake. I mean, you don't need that much stuff. It's not, when we were kids, we used to fish with a cane pole, a string, and a hook, and a couple of worms. I mean,
Right.
and we caught fish. I mean, you look behind you, I've got a bunch of rods. There's a cane pole back here. So there's a telescoping rod back here somewhere. It's basically, it's no reel. It's like a cane pole, but it telescopes. I think it gets to be 16 feet long. But it breaks down to 4 feet.
Nice.
It's
That's a good point though. I've heard of people like just crushing on fish with cane poles and like a little fly on the end, especially this early spring when you can reach out to those, weeds that are growing, the cane beds, all of that. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm getting excited for panfish.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. The spots tell me, if you see them on beds like that, I mean, that's what we did. We didn't have cane poles along with standard rod and reel, but that's literally all we did. We put a little black dry fly on the end, and you stood on the edge of the bank and just basically dropped it over right on top of the bed and just picked the fish out all day. I mean, it was it was kind of unfair. It was a hell of a lot of fun, but it was kind of unfair.
The thing about hiking into a spot like that is you can only bring so many fish home with you. Right? So you either
That's the other thing I carry. I carry a collapsible fish basket. So I always have been, and I am, no matter what I'm fishing, selective harvest. I don't ever take any more than a meal. I mean, if I take 10 fish, that's a lot for me. Most of the time it's 5, 6. A lot of times I don't bring any home because, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't like cleaning fish.
Yeah,
us either. I love fish. I love to eat it, but it's a pain in the ass. I don't like cleaning it. It's a mess. It just, I don't like anything about it, but I do it because I do like fresh fish. But I don't take a lot, so carry 5 fish back in a basket like that isn't really that bad. I keep a cooler of ice in the truck, and you ice them as soon as, that's the one trick, especially for summer and spring fishing. Ice them as soon as you can. If you're going to bring fish home, get them on ice because that keeps them firmer, keeps them from getting mushy. That's a lot of people get turned off of fish because they get the mushy, fishy taste. You got to keep it cold.
Yep.
That's why they tell you to bleed walleyes when you keep them too, because it gets that out of the fillets. And you get that nice white firm fish that people like to eat instead of, you get people who don't like fish because it tastes like fish. I'm not sure what the hell it's supposed to taste like, but if
you ask Emily, it's supposed to taste like Frank's Red Hot.
I saw your post last night about the breading, and the bag it was in. I figured that's what that was. It had to be hot sauce.
Yeah, that's all Emily.
That's my favorite way.
Well, that's fine. Like I said, I kind of laughed about that. That was the first thing I thought of. It had to be hot sauce. I've never tried it that way. I always make it. I just,
Well, we should have invited you over.
It's good. It honestly, it is really good. I think so. One of our mutual friends, Jim Zaha, he kind of turned me on to doing a final rinse with a little bit of vinegar in the water when you do your fillets. After you have them all skinned and boned, you just kind of rinse them off. Put a little vinegar in the water, rinse them off again, and then rinse all the vinegar off. And that really takes care of any of the slime transfer from the table or your knife or any of that stuff. It cleans all that stuff off. But the same goes for that Frank's Red Hot. So the Frank's Red Hot, the base is vinegar. And so you put the fish in the hot sauce, and it kind of just like soaks into the fish.
Fish is your fish.
And it does. And for those of you out there that are like spicy sensitive, I love spicy food, but if you're spicy sensitive, there's zero spice to
it's
it.
Very little.
So you can't. So it just tastes like Frank's Red Hot without it being spicy. And then like the breading we put on it is mostly just a textural thing. I don't put any more seasoning in the breading. It's just a simple. It goes from the Frank's Red Hot in the bag. Put it in the flour, coat it in flour, put it in an egg wash, put it in the crunchy breading, and put it in the fryer.
You did more than I do. Sometimes I just take it out of that Frank's Red Hot and just put it in panko and then fry it, and that is fine. Yours was better than mine.
I'm just saying.
So the vinegar thing.
I don't get this big by
I
Not
haven't
know
heard of the vinegar thing. So when I clean them, I rinse them off in cold water and I put them in cold water again. After I rinse them, I put them in a bowl with cold water. I set them in the fridge overnight just because they'll get cold and they'll firm up.
Yeah, so when you do the rinse with cold water, dump all the water out, and then fill it up with cold water again, and then just take like between like an eighth and a quarter cup of vinegar, doesn't matter what kind of vinegar, just put it in with the water, and then you swish your fish around like a washing, like just swish it around with your hands, and they'll start to get slippery. Like you can feel them, they'll get slippery, and then you dump all that water out. You only do it for like 20-30 seconds. Dump all that water out again, and then rinse them off with cold water again, and then they'll get like that squeaky feeling, you know, and then you can just put them in your fridge, and that cleans all the extra slime off.
Matt's way wastes less water.
Yeah, well.
Well, yeah.
Then I'll do it.
It's gonna be that way about it, I guess.
Oh my gosh. So you did mention that you only go really fishing a few times the year. And so are there specific things that you're targeting? Is it springtime? Is it good weather? Do you do any kind of hunting around for ice season?
No, usually when I spring fish, like I said, I go up, like I said, tomorrow I'm going to go up by Ryan. I usually make that trip once in the winter to ice fish with him, and then once sometime early in the year. My birthday's the first week of June, so I've been trying to do right around then, sometime in that week, but by then he's usually so booked up guide and stuff that, it's tough to get a slot. So I'm going to go tomorrow because it's early yet. He's just starting the guide season. So he had a day open. So I snuck in on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we do the Timmy Memorial. We haven't put a date together for that one yet. That's usually midsummer-ish.
Mm-hmm.
I run up by Jason Hyman, usually once or twice in the summer up to his cabin up by Tomahawk, and fish up by him. Joe Miller has a place up on the Willow, so I run up by him and fish with him. The last couple of years have been Memorial Day weekend, so then I'll sneak out by myself a couple times on a Friday if I have when I have the day off and I have nothing else planned. I'll duck out for a couple hours and mess around, but that's about it. I ice fish a whole lot more seriously than I do spring fish. It's to me, this is fun fishing. It's all fun, but to me this is the screw off fishing. It's kind of it's just kind of get out and relax fishing. I'm a little more intense about ice. If I do a pan around my basement, you see the amount of crap I get sitting out for ice fishing. It's pretty
I do really like your ice rod rack.
What's that?
I like your ice rod rack.
Yeah, that's one of them. There's that one. There's one on this wall. Then all my Sullivan tip downs are in a pile back here. And then the countertop I'm leaning on has got a bank of cabinets underneath it. That's got tip downs, tip ups. There's a milk carton of tip ups over here. My rod box is back behind me on the floor. I got stuff sitting all over the place. This rod rack back here is my softwater stuff, and a lot of the older stuff is I got from my cousin. My uncle passed away. He was a big fisherman, and they didn't know what to do with it all. He asked if I wanted it, so I have all kinds of stuff back here. Stuff that'll probably never see the water again, but it's just kind of cool stuff to hang on to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said, if you look around, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious what my passions are by coming downstairs, because between the duck calls hanging on my battery rack over here and the ice rods hanging around, you can tell where I spend most of my time starting the 1st of September.
There you go.
Oh
my gosh, that's awesome.
It's a lot of it all started with Ice Junkies. That's it's kind of where it really took off. Ryan and Jen put that family together, and there's a lot of us that are friends and family because of that. That's why that's how we all know each other. But that's where a lot of my pro staff, and for the record, people that don't know, pro staff doesn't mean professional, it means promotional, just so everybody knows that. These aren't paid positions. So, we do, I work with KMDA Inc., Ice Runner fish houses, float suits. And then, PC Fun's got a great line of ice fish and stuff. James Sullivan, you guys talked to him a few times over at Sullivan Tip Down. Innovative Tip Downs, you guys talked to Zach a couple of weeks ago. He was pumping up the innovatives. He got me turned on to those. It's the ice tamer line from Finn's. That relationship came from the passion for ice fishing. That's where a lot of this came from. Most of these connections made at the ice shows. And it's just because that's what we do. This is the summer fish for me is something to pass time. Winter's when it gets serious.
But what I love hearing about this though is that you're talking about ice and you're making this sound so nonchalant or whatever, but it's showing like a lot of growth. I mean, that's the thing is when you're an angler, when you can get involved with other fishermen, when you can talk to other people, when you can network, then you start learning about things like Finn's braid or a new jig or a new rod or something that's going to work for you, whatever that thing is. And that's so cool to be able to apply it in so many different ways. And, you're talking about pro staff means promotional staff. But when you start to work with people and talk to people and get those opinions and hear those things, that's what makes that other part of the job. Because you're right, it's not paid, right? But, that's what makes that part of the job so fun is to be able to share your experience. Here's what works for me. Here's what I found. And you're talking about that ice season in open water and kind of blurring the line there. And I love that. I love that because so many people are like, here's my ice stuff and here's my open water stuff. And they never let those mix, right? They assume it's two different sports, right? But when you can take something from one and learn and apply it somewhere else, I mean, that is exactly the point. And that's going to make you a better angler.
Right. Well, and the fish don't stop swimming just because it gets cold out. It's not, a lot of this, there's specialized pieces for each discipline, I guess is the best way to put it. And they can go for each species. There's particular bass rods and musky rods, and hell, even ice. There's Neptune ice rods. Another one of my companies. They've got, I forget how many different models, and all specific to different disciplines. But the networking part of it is probably doing stuff like this, doing the shows. I mean, people think I'm nuts, but I love doing them. I mean, it's, you get together, you get to talk fishing, you get to meet people, you get to go out and I made a joke at work today when I was talking about being on the podcast, and I told somebody they should tune in and listen. They don't know anything about fishing, they don't care anything about fishing. I said you should tune in and listen. It's going to actually hear me talk about something, and it sounds like I know what the hell I'm talking about for once. But it's it's those relationships, and it's that brand representation. That's another thing about the promotional staff part of it. How you present yourself and the product and the industry, the sport. It's having that passion for it is what makes it is what makes it fun, because you're talking to a lot of people that have the same passion you do, but you wouldn't know that until you start talking to them. You could see it. I mean, you could see it on their face. You can see when they start talking about it. The one guy in particular that you start talking about fishing, about products, is Jason Brennick from PC Fun. I mean, you talk fishing and talk the industry with him, and he just lights up. I mean, he's really a good guy, really good spokesman for the sport. But got a passion for this like you wouldn't believe. And you guys, like I said, you talked to Zach a couple of weeks ago. You talked to him about anything else, and it's a general conversation until you mention fish. And Christ, mention a kayak to him sometime.
Yeah.
You'll never stop talking. But
I was just gonna say, and I think the culmination of all this, you've done a really good job, giving out, not just promoting brands. Like that's, like for me, like the brand thing is only important to a certain point, right? I think the more important part about being a pro staff is promoting the sport itself. right? And I think you've done a really good job with your short videos that you've been posting on all the little tips, and like, you don't have to be fancy, and these things that you use do work. And I just think it's been really good. You've been doing a really good job just promoting the sport.
I appreciate that. And a lot of it I learned from you guys, because I mean, it's, you guys and Ryan, and there's the video thing actually. The video thing kind of started as a joke. I did my very first one I did on tip ups, I think. I'd have to go back and look, but I started out the video. I started the video. I said, "Hey guys," I mean, it's my standard greeting. "Hey guys." Well, my 16-year-old daughter thought that was freaking hilarious. Her and her friends got the biggest kick out of that. So that's all I heard for 2 days. "Hey guys." So then a couple people said, the video, the video was kind of cool. No, I just figured, what the hell? I'll try and make another one. Well, it kind of snowballed. More people said, "Hey, it's kind of neat. It's good information. Can you make some more?" Sure. Well, then Rich from Finn's called me and asked me specifically, "Can you do me a video?" He said, I want to make a point to somebody. I can try. Just do what you just do what you've been doing. He said, but put the brand in the video. So I did. It just snowballed. I mean, it just, from there it took off. Now I made a couple the other day, but very hit and miss. I started a YouTube channel, Matt Nelles Outdoors. It's the same videos you see every place else. I just put them on a YouTube format for more reach. But far from a professional. I mean, I'm not going to be Babe Winkleman anytime soon. Or Jason Mitchell. But they're kind of fun to make. And like I said, it's the talking to people part of it. The shows, going to the shows, working at the booth, talking to people. Being the sportsmanship part of the sport. That's another one that Jason really preaches too. Is I don't want to say no negativity, because there's no such thing as no negativity, but the no product, the not bashing another product because you don't use it. The staying out of arguments online about stuff. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to remember my name. It's not going to be that Matt guy yelled at me online. It was the guy wearing a PC Fun shirt.
If you yell at people, they might remember you.
Then that's true. I've actually got some negative feedback here and there. But I said it's going to be the guy. It's the guy wearing a piece of Fun shirt. They're not going to remember my name. It's going to be who I represent, and you don't want to bring that baggage back on the company.
Right.
One of my videos on the innovative tip downs, I had gotten a bunch of people had commented on Facebook on one of my videos I had done, complaining about the innovative tip down. No, I don't have one handy, but actually I do. So, told you, going to one of these drawers, there's ice fishing shit. So these little line holders, okay, a guy complained online saying he was having trouble reeling it in. So I mean, reeling it in. Well, he said I couldn't reel. He said it wouldn't reel. He said the spool's so small it doesn't reel in decent. I said, well, it's not a reel. I said it's a line holder. It's a spool. I said, you're not fighting fish in this thing. Well, no, but he said even trying to reel it up. I said, okay. So I did a video. I said, explain how to use these. And I said, 90% of the issues with these are operator error. That's all I said. Because they're getting line tangled up. It's getting in spots it shouldn't be, or having all kinds of problems with. So I explained what I do, the high vis line and the whole thing. I got more flack because people basically said I called them stupid because they didn't know how to run one of these rods. Yeah, all I said was operator error. But I caught all kinds of hell for that. So the representation careful how you say stuff. It's a lot of it. The fun part of it is the challenge. The explaining stuff and trying to keep myself out of trouble as much as I can.
I appreciate your story. I live that more than you know.
Yeah, you're in retail, aren't you? You work in retail?
Yeah,
Well,
kind of. Fish mounts.
She works at Fatante's.
What's that?
She works at Fatante Taxidermy in Anago.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. If you have to deal with customers, then my hat's off to you.
At least it's about fishing.
Right. And I can, it's funny. I've said that people that know me really well know that I'm not a people person. I mean, I very, very low tolerance for some of that stuff.
But
if I start talking fishing and like this, I can do a show and rarely have a problem. I mean, I can sit there and yap fishing all day and not have an issue with it.
Right.
But I go to Quick Trip and there's 3 people in line and I'm so irritated I want to leave. That's way too people for me.
None of these people even know how to put together a bobber rig.
Right. Yeah. Can't tie a knot in a hook. Hell, wait me. I get it.
Oh, funny. Oh my gosh. So I have to say, as we push through spring here, we're definitely going to be watching your adventures because I'm going to be, I don't know, maybe hiking around and trying out a few spots of my own. But I have to say, as we push into summer, especially, we're excited to get you in the boat with us because we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, we got to do that. So we've talked about it the last couple of years and just could never make it work out. But
we'll make it work.
We'll keep trying.
So I'm only an hour away from you, so it's not. I try to get trying to get Jack Burkheimer up here next year for ice fishing too, so I'll have to keep that.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll meet up.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, do like what I forget the word all the fancy social media influencers use. Collab. We'll do a collab. That's it.
We'll do a collab.
We're down.
There's all kinds of phrases going through my head. And I didn't want to say any of them because none of them are going to come out right. Collab. We'll use that one.
Oh, awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much for being here this evening because this has been so much fun to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And to everybody at home, thank you guys for being here as well because that is always a big part of the fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're fishing this weekend, but we'll still be here next weekend or next week to talk about, I don't know, fishing and all kinds of good stuff. So we're hoping to see everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.